Yeah, no, sorry. That's fine. I also can you also record the audio on memory card like for a normal show? Okay, I just completely forgot to ask. Okay, I know, but I was just like, you might not have even, So, give me 1 minute to try and find it. If I can't find it, I'll just not worry about it. But I should be able to. So you can delete the retweet from before, Jeff. I'm gonna do a new one.
I'm gonna double retweet.
All right. This is okay. All right. So live events. There it is. I'll fix the title after. All right, I found it and I'm about to send it out. Thank you. Oh.
This is the best part.
No, oh, that's fine. I'm like, I have no idea.
I've been eating my boogers this whole time.
I have no idea how to do that. But actually, that'd be great. Okay. All right. Okay. Now we're going live.
I wish I could be recorded right now so I could say like, oh, I know what every celebrity feels like when they're trying to delete a dick pic. You're just like, how the hell do you delete a fucking tweet? No wonder they're up for so long.
Yeah, they're there forever.
Edit profile. Like once you undo retweet. Yeah, there you go. Fuck you. Unretweeted.
All right. Thank you for that. I just wanted to get something out there. Great. Yes. Sometimes these are just for me. Anyway, welcome to the third annual Bladtcast Live Oscars, aka Academy Awards after show. This is our second with cameras. I'm Christian Blatt. You can find me as always at Christian DMZ. And don't forget the Bladtcast at Bladtcast, Bladtcast, on Facebook, the Bladtcast. And of course, we have bladtcast.com, Bladtcast. Now, I said with cameras, but for a lot of you, you're just going to be listening to the audio version that's going to magically show up, and you don't have to look at just how handsome I am, and joined by someone far more handsome than myself, the one, the only Captain EO, Jeff
Cocan.
Duray. Cocan.
Hey,
That's
Cocan.
Right. Hey, Cocan.
He coming to us straight from wet, hot American summer.
From on the show my wife works on, Orange is the New Black, there's a character called nicknamed Beer Can, because apparently his junk is as thick as a beer can. So
perfect.
I was going to say, now we know why it's out here. Not with us. The one, the only Will Sterling. He's actually still drunk from last year's Oscars post show. So
Sleeping this one off.
Yeah, he's in the drunk tank. I almost said the junk tank.
He's in the drunk tank getting jerk tanked.
He might be getting just tanked one way or the other. And momentarily, we're going to be joined by Christian Toto from Hollywood in Toto and HollywoodInToto.com, who he has actually been a part of all three Bladtcast Oscars after shows.
So you're saying Toto's in tow?
Toto is definitely going to be in tow
Totes.
when he's totes ready for us. The first Bladtcast after show, you helped me record it. But you were working on a Sunday night at premiere. You were not on the show, though, because you were working. But Christian and I talked about that year's Oscars. Last year's, I think, was the most fun because Will was just so unbelievably shit-faced.
I do have to say that there's a special place in my heart for like drunk episodes of these shows.
Of any show. Yeah, well, that's true, because that's a good point. There are multiple drunk episodes. For my 40th birthday, I know I was definitely drunk on multiple occasions. But you know what? Not drunk watching the Oscars tonight. No. But I'm
drunk with equality.
Yeah, I'm drunk with wokeness and also drunk with excitement that we are indeed joined by Mr. Christian Toto of Hollywood and Toto. Christian, we see you. You don't see us, though, do you?
I don't. I see a nice producer type person, perhaps.
Yes, we appreciate Brianna so much for helping us out. This is basically she's doing this as part of a work release program. This is not something she gets paid for, but she's helping us out, and we really appreciate it. But Christian, thanks so much for staying up late. Of course you're in Mountain Time, so it's not that late, but it is late. It's 10:30. Most nights at 10:30, I'm probably passed out on the couch with just some drool. I mean, now that I have 2 kids. How many kids do you have? Do you have multiple kids?
I've got 2 kids,
Yeah.
6 and 9. So I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what we're talking about.
Obviously, big Oscar fans.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that your kids were excited that Shape of Water won for Best Picture. So Christian and I were texting, sort of the logistics before we got started tonight, and I was like, it always goes long, but this year, that's like crazy long. It was like 2 hours. It was like 45 minutes over. Usually it's like 10, maybe like 15, and I was just like, oh, okay, it's fine. I just got to get to the studio. It's less than 10 minutes away, and Jeff, you still got here before me.
Yep, I left before the best film came out. So
well, it's funny because last year I almost left before Best Film, so I almost came to do the show without having seen the mix-up with the award. It was.
Wait, what happened?
That was last year. Yeah, the biggest thing was that I had to catch up because my son was just so tired, and I'm like, I got to put him to bed, and everything was taking forever. So I actually, no spoilers on the In Memoriam because I had to fast forward through it because I love the In Memoriam because it always makes me, oh no, I forgot, but I didn't have time. I just had to keep going. Christian, your overall thoughts on the show as a show, and then we'll go into talking about some of the movies.
Wow. What can you say at this point? I mean, a show that is always running long has an extended sketch where the big celebrities meet with the rubes in the theater that goes on and on. A jet ski gag that was not funny the first time, and just an amazing amount of woke politics. And, each award show, even last year with the gaffe with the envelope, at least that was engaging. It caught your interest. It was exciting. It was weird. It was unplanned. I feel like nothing in this show was really memorable beyond the fact that it was unmemorable. I mean, I'm just amazed by it that they just can't make it under 3 hours. That seems impossible. That should be their mission number one, and they can't do it.
The interesting thing was that I actually expected it to be way preachier. I expected it to be a lot more Time's Up, a lot more woke, as I said earlier. And look, it had all that stuff, but I just thought it was going to be, 4 hours of that. And I'm like, okay, we get it. But the fact that they found time to give out awards, I think that, they do usually tend to do these things where regular people get to meet the stars. I thought that the thing in the movie theater was fun, but my wife was like, wait a minute, isn't everything closed off for the Oscars? Didn't these people probably expect something was going to happen if you go to see a screening of A Wrinkle in Time? Now, Jeff, you didn't actually get to see a lot of the show.
That's surprisingly one of the few snippets I caught.
Do you like stuff like that? I mean, I kind of like it because I imagine myself being somebody in the theater. And in that way, I'm like, okay, that would be kind of cool. Oh, Wonder Woman's giving out candy. Maybe it's not great for the home viewers, and you could tell the people inside the Kodak Theater were like, can you just give out my award already?
Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge Oscar show buff, right?
Sure.
So I'm aware of the films. I watch more of the films, but I don't always catch the Oscars themselves, the presentations. So as far as Kimmel and his presentation, I said before, I felt like he was interestingly, appropriately self-deprecating to start off, like making fun of the Academy as it is. It's like, hey, we're all a bunch of like hypocrites. Remember that? Remember how we're hypocrites and we couldn't even read an envelope last year? LOL.
Yeah.
And then, so with that same stunt, I did it. There was a little moment where he was like, we should show appreciation to all the people who make us millionaires. And they were like, yeah, haha, the obligatory clap. He's like, no, I'm fucking serious. Like,
Yeah,
let's
go over there.
Thank them. And they're like, oh, really? And he had to like call. He's like, get up. Come on. We're going to go
Well, I
do
thought
it.
that was interesting.
It got awkward, which was a little funny for me, I got to say.
I think that's probably the best part. Christian, let me know what you think. He very clearly didn't say, come on, Meryl Streep, come on over. He didn't like say, Nicholson, come with me. It was like, so who wants to go do this? And it's like, oh, people who are newer on the scene, like Gal Gadot probably is like, hey, that's fun. It wasn't like, hey, biggest, most exciting names in the room, come on across the street. It's definitely one of those things that when it comes that late in the show, you're like, you're really doing this? Go ahead.
They did
Christian.
it last year, though. Do you remember that segment where they had people? There was so much a tour bus was driving nearby the stage, and they kind of hustled them in, and they met some of the stars, and it was kind of cute last year. But it was a variation of the same shtick they did tonight. I mean, so way too long, no comic payoff, and I can't imagine that they just had volunteers. I think they all knew ahead of time. Hey, Gal Gadot, you're going to come with us, and you're going to come with us as well. So I don't think anything like this is improv. I think it's all planned down to the T. And by the way, if you're going to have the victims of Harvey Weinstein give out a presentation, which I thought was a great idea, you got to have Rose McGowan there because she's at the heart and soul of this.
That was interesting. I thought that the fact that there were only 3 of them, and you're like, I feel like there's a lot more room on that stage,
That's right.
And look, I'm sure Uma Thurman's just not interested, and but yeah, there that was a very empty stage, and you figured that there would have been opportunity. They could have very well had quite a few more people there. There wasn't that much show to this show, which is the way that I think that award shows are supposed to be. There's a couple jokes here and there, but it's more about the awards, some of the speeches, and a lot of times your jokes are referencing something that somebody said. Jeff, you had a very astute observation that I think you should share.
Yeah, so I was just saying, I paid close attention, and I like to keep myself informed. I watch a lot of InfoWars, right? So I like to know who is controlling Hollywood. And I think based on this Oscars, based on the live action short and the winner of Best Film, that it's really the deafs that own Hollywood.
I think that not nearly enough people are saying what you're truly getting to. And, obviously, if I could sign, I would. I feel like it would be appropriate.
But you don't want a fake sign because that just seems like infinitely more offensive.
No, but I'll take a page from the original cast of SNL, and I'll have you make that statement again, and I will deliver it for the hard of hearing as Garrett Morris would. So go ahead.
It's the deaf who run Hollywood.
It's the deaf who run Hollywood. So there you go. My little tip of the hat to the great Garrett Morris, who I once got a haircut next to. So you see,
Don't worry, they're not listening.
Oh, I don't have the bell. It's always a moment like that. It's like, oh, I didn't bring the bell. So, Christian, like I was saying, there's not much show to the show. Did anything else stand out to you as, oh, this worked, didn't work? And it could sort of be some of the clips packages or other things that they did. It doesn't actually have to be the attempts at comedy.
Well, I was kind of surprised by Jimmy Kimmel's monologue because, listen, it was way too woke for me. The Trump jokes seemed tired. But there were no jokes there. There was no big laugh. I'm thinking, you've got months and months to prepare for this. You've got a team of writers. You've got to have a couple of haymaker jokes in there somewhere. He didn't even try. I mean, it's almost like, I complain a lot about late night comedy, that it's very serious. It's more punditry. Where are the jokes? There were no jokes tonight. I mean, there were a couple little mild chuckles at best. And then I thought the great Adam Carolla was allegedly behind the scenes scribbling some jokes. I didn't hear one that was even Carolla-esque. I mean, if you're going to do the woke and do the political stuff, at least, in between, make us laugh. I mean, there's so much material for an Oscar celebration. I mean, look at any Billy Crystal performance or even like a David Letterman or a Jon Stewart. There's funny stuff there sometimes. Even if I don't agree with things, go for the laugh. You're entertaining us. Show us why Hollywood is so magical. And it just wasn't there. I mean, I just kind of clung to those clips montages with both hands, hoping that would kind of spark my love for the night. But gosh, it was nothing.
Yeah, I have a friend who for a long time was a writer on the Daily Show. So that meant when Jon Stewart's hosted the Oscars, they would come out and they spent a lot. I mean, they spent a lot of time, and I think that they took the comedy, very seriously and made sure that they got it in there. I think it's tough times to make jokes. I mean, that room is a tough place to actually have jokes be told. But if you are going to tell jokes, have them written by people who write good jokes. Don't say to the cast of Star Wars, "Hey, you guys want to riff through some stuff?" And and it was just like, oh, it just hurt. And I feel like Darth Vader, who, if for those watching, is on my shirt, I feel like he had the last laugh. That he cursed Luke Skywalker in the way that's like, oh, you're going to have a terrible appearance on the Oscars. And I think they were upstaged by BB-8 only in that he didn't deliver any bad jokes, at least as far as we can tell.
Yeah, that was the Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. It doesn't really. We actually have a few people in the chat, even though we're late. We're on late. Really across the country, it's late. But Shareable Texas, who is a fan of my show, The Trump Report, says that he doesn't feel right about Jimmy Kimmel hosting. Dude ran the Man Show and is now speaking on Me Too. Not a bad point. The guy whose show used to feature over the end credits Girls on Trampolines, which I'm not saying was a bad way to end the show. I'm just saying that.
Are you anti-women's fitness?
No, I'm not anti-trampolines. I probably am anti-trampolines. Christian, would you ever let your kid on a trampoline park? Because I know I wouldn't.
What?
We've got a trampoline in our backyard, and I feel awful about it, but they have so much fun with it, and it's been such a tool for us, and it's been such a great exercise for them. But I've read all the horror stories, so I watch with trepidation. Let's put it that way.
I had a trampoline from like very young age, and it was actually, I think, instrumental in me not getting injured when I played sports for the most part, because I would like land on my neck and all sorts of stuff, but constantly and bounce up and down, and I got really strong in my joints. So when I played competitive sports, I never got hurt.
See, trampolines. I'm just afraid that, to keep it on the theme of the night, that my kid would reenact the pivotal scene from the end of $1 Million Baby, and I'm like, oh, because I got him a trampoline. But, look, it's an interesting point that you have Jimmy Kimmel, who I think can be very funny. I think he's a great guest on the Howard Stern show. I don't watch his show, but you know what? I don't watch any of those shows, because if I'm up at that point, I can't even see straight. I'm just feeding a baby. You know how it is, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, then you should probably watch his show, because all I ever catch from his show are the viral moments that come out, and all that's been of the last few months is just like him crying about his baby, which understandably that's devastating stuff that he went through. But that's pretty much all I know of his show.
Well, not to bring the evening down, but I've spent enough time with my daughter at Children's Hospital that I don't need to then be, made that much more upset watching Jimmy Kimmel talk about his son, who I'm glad to hear is doing well. And that's what it really comes down to. But I although I do like, I guess, that they film these videos of parents taking away their Halloween candy from kids. And I think that that's actually kind of a funny idea. But anyway, so we'll move into the actual awards, but as the show went, it's all right. It wasn't great, but it wasn't a disaster. I don't think. Christian, let me ask you actually just about some of the movies. Of the big nominated movies, what were some that stood out for you? Like, what were a couple of your favorites this year?
Well, Get Out, I remember watching the trailer and I thought, this looks awful. I mean, I couldn't believe how bad it looked. Okay, Jordan Peele, a comedian making a horror movie, just across the board. And then I saw it and I absolutely loved it. And I saw it pretty late in the cycle when everyone else was raving about it. So I'm not upset at all that it got best screenplay. It's a really good movie. And I love the fact it's a genre movie. I mean, you could argue the same. The Shape of Water was a genre movie as well. So, bravo to the Oscar voters for kind of stretching things out a bit and giving horror a little love. Otherwise, it was pretty predictable. Frances McDormand was the favorite. Gary Oldman was the heavy favorite. The Shape of Water, because it got so many nominations, sort of had the inside track on Best Picture. And then Allison Janney with Best Supporting, and Sam Rockwell. Again, because we've seen 16 different award presentations prior, a lot of the mystery has gone away, and that's not the Oscars' fault. It's just the way the system works.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There weren't really big surprises. I mean, I guess Shape of Water winning Best Picture is big only in the way that it didn't fit into any of the narratives that Get Out didn't win. And look, I think Lady Bird was a sweet movie. I think it's a fun, and I don't know if it's fun, but it's a nice story. It's not a Best Picture kind of movie. I didn't expect it to win, but the female director didn't win. The black director didn't win. Any of those things that I thought might have happened didn't. But when you peel that away, you're not surprised that this is the movie that won, Jeff.
Well, the Oscars are obviously intrinsically political. There's a whole point about these people having to sell themselves to the Academy beforehand, right? So, I think that's why it feels a little shocking that one of these political or in some way perceived to be controversial type themed movies won, a la Moonlight.
Yeah.
Right? Because that when we found out that was actually
the actual
the best
winner,
picture,
yes.
Right? It was like, yeah, that fits. Even though that was, again, I would say that movie wasn't my favorite of that year, but it made sense to me as an Oscar winner. My feeling and what I said about Shape of Water is that I understand why it won. I thought it was a beautifully made picture. I have no complaints about it, but it just felt like that's the one Guillermo del Toro is going to win for. Like, of all his beautiful movies that have moved me over time, like that probably had the least effect. And now it's the best picture, which, congratulations. It just felt like, I don't know. It's almost like somebody getting the gold medal for their like third best job.
Or it's like, basically you give John Wayne the Oscar for True Grit or something, because it's like, well, he never really got one, so go ahead. But I would say that, Guillermo del Toro is a guy where you're like, he's such a visionary, he's such a unique artist. You expect him to win at some point, but I 100% agree with you that if you were to just watch his movies, just to sit there and watch them, and you're like, which one of these would you give an Oscar to? I don't think it's this one. I would give it an Oscar for, at least for something, for Pan's Labyrinth, because I had never seen anything like that, and I'm still horrified and haunted by it. But
absolutely,
that's my own problem. I think my wife legitimately is still freaked out by that movie. So.
And that movie's what, 10 years old, and that was the first thing my mind went to when you try to think of like, well, what's like a really evocative Del Toro film? Oh, Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah. So I think that you're right, that there weren't a lot of surprises. I like Sam Rockwell a lot, though. A lot of movies.
I adored him as an actor for a long time, so I was surprised. I didn't realize he had pretty much never been on the nominations or whatever, so congratulations.
Yeah, and he's in a movie that I talked about when the old Dennis Miller show was still on. I had the filmmakers on, but this movie, The Way Back, a few years ago, which I really liked, and he had kind of a nice role in it. Christian, the thing that surprised me wasn't as much that this was Gary Oldman's first win, but it was only his second nomination. And I'm just like, where are the nominations for Gary Oldman before this? And I'm not saying, look, I'd give him an Oscar for Commissioner Gordon, but I think most people probably wouldn't. That's all right.
Why not?
Well, because genre movies don't usually get it. I mean, Heath Ledger already got an Oscar for that movie, and I think they weren't going to give out a lot of Batman Oscars. But Christian, what do you think about the fact that, look, I thought that he was great in that movie. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve an Oscar for it, but I was just like, I can't believe he didn't get one before.
Yeah, I think if you go back year by year and look at all the people who are nominated, some years are just more competitive than others. So even though we look back at Gary Oldman and say, of course, he's a great actor, he's done wonderful performances, and he's a true chameleon, a guy who looks different in every movie often, it's a little more complicated than that. And also Sam Rockwell, and I loved The Way Back. One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite performances maybe ever. It was just so full of life and so magical in a way that a young person relates to an older person in that performance, but it wasn't nominated. So, I feel like each year there's like a rhythm to the Oscar season, and some performances are great, but they don't catch the wave, and then they just float off. I mean, it's really weird how it has sort of an energy of its own, and some actors just kind of pass on by. I mean, you can look back and lots of performances that were just wonderful that didn't even get not noticed, and that's just the way it is. I mean, Robert Redford a couple of years ago for All Is Lost, I'm pretty sure he got just completely ignored. And that was a great role in a very good movie where it was just him.
He's on a
with very
boat
little
for
dialogue.
like almost the whole movie or the entire movie, right? I didn't see that movie, but I remember what it is. And
Yeah.
it's a perfect example. I'm like, oh, I've heard that's great, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I think when we look back, we're going to say that's a great performance. I don't care what the Oscars said, and I think the same thing with The Shape of Water. We're going to look back and that was Best Picture. It was fun. It was interesting. It was clever. It was beautiful to look at. But Best Picture for a year?
I mean, every few years, you get a Shakespeare in Love or a Crash. You know, you always get something. Jeff.
I realize that this is totally not Oscar worthy, but I just had the thought of Michael Fassbender acting off of himself in Alien Covenant. And when I remember watching those scenes and then specifically having talked about actors having to like play off of themselves because that crappy Netflix movie that came out with like Noomi Rapace where she played herself like 7 times. It was just awful. And because they'd have like these dinner scenes, and it was just so terrible. Like that was the worst possible version of acting off yourself. And then I saw Covenant shortly thereafter, and I thought it was like incredible how well he was playing off of himself. So
well, I'm sure it's good, and believe it or not, I haven't seen Alien Covenant yet. But not that I don't want to, but nothing will ever top, of course, Nutty Professor to the Clumps. That is the best example of an actor playing off of themselves. Hercules. You know, it's funny. We were talking about the way back. It's funny that we're talking about a movie that is not that well known from a few years ago. That's a better Lady Bird than Lady Bird. You know, it's a similar kind of story. And yes, because
it's about boys.
It's about boys. Yeah, exactly. And you know, Jim Rash and Nat Faxon made the movie, so it's the the narrative isn't there the same way. But I'm like, that's a way more better coming of age story for me anyway. Yes, Jeff.
I think there's like a small part of me that's just bitter towards Lady Bird as a movie because that movie's basically about like the girl I dated in college who was from the Sacramento area,
Sacramento?
went to like film school and everything. It's just like, get over yourself. Like, I get it. Like, move on, Sasha.
The thing about Gary Oldman winning too was that there was a shout out for Douglas Urbanski, who was part of the Westwood One family, had his own radio show, but he guest hosted for Dennis, somebody that I know a little bit, and I was just like, he's worked with Gary forever. So I was glad to hear that. Every once in a while, I hear one of those. There was like one name of somebody that Heather's like, oh yeah, I work with that person's wife. That, you know, not the person on stage, but somebody who got mentioned. You know, and it's like you always try to like, we could do like a bingo for people. You know, there's a lot of things that I don't know that I expected to see happen, such as Kobe Bryant winning an Oscar. I mean, ever in my life, I didn't see that. That looked like it's probably pretty cool, but it's not something I expected to see was Kobe Bryant winning an Oscar.
Kobe Bryant has more Oscars. This is a meme, so I'm not going to pretend I came up with this. More Oscars than Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, and Brad Pitt combined. And this is the part that I added on, and I bet he can dunk over all of them.
Was there anything that surprised you in terms of the awards, Christian? I mean, you know, Kobe Bryant winning an Oscar, it's more of just the, huh? But, I mean, was there anything you're like, oh, okay, this actually surprised me?
I don't think there was. You know, I think early on in the ceremony, I tweeted or just thought to myself, this is like a parody of what I expected this to be, like with all the virtue signaling and all the sort of the commentary. Like, I mean, I can't believe they went there. And it's funny because the Oscar producers before the presentation, this is like maybe a week ago, talked to the New York Times and said, you know what, we're going to have a less political show. We're going to focus on the movies. I'm like, no, you're not. Of course you're not. Why are you saying that? So, yeah, nothing really caught me. You know, there are often moments, quirky speeches, some weird repartee between the presenters. And I thought that's kind of what you love about these events, because they catch you off guard. It's live TV. I didn't even feel like there were any moments like that, or even great Jimmy Kimmel riffs on things that happen spur of the moment, because that's often the magic of the show, where a Billy Crystal or a Letterman or a Jon Stewart sees something goofy and then makes it even funnier. I didn't see any of that. Everything felt flat to me.
Well, to bring it around to the sort of things that you cover at Hollywood and Toto and hollywoodandtoto.com, and I believe you're at Hollywood and Toto is where people can find you. I was so excited to jump into the show. I didn't do any of the business up front promoting where people can find you. I thought that that was a nice sort of a touching homage for people who had served. And there was like a big screen thanks to the military. It's not something that you necessarily come to expect out of leftist Hollywood. So so when you get something like that, you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. And I also thought that Wes Studi was very funny when he talked about his service in Vietnam, and there was this smattering of applause, and he looked around and he said, anybody else? I was like wondering if anybody else was going to join in and applaud. And they're like, oh, no, Vietnam. No, we still don't clap for Vietnam. I mean, Jane Fonda was in the building. So, obviously, I think that they were afraid to applaud for Vietnam in general.
I stand corrected. That was a surprise. No one really expected that. It was. I mean, it wasn't long, but it was. Yeah. It was a good moment. And another quick thought. I know they went for. They really kind of pushed the diversity aggressively as far as who were the presenters, which is fine. But I really wanted, like, when I watch the show, as someone who's loved Hollywood forever, I want the big stars. I want the Nicholsons. I want the Dustin Hoffman. Well, maybe you can't have Dustin Hoffman anymore. And it was great to have Rita Moreno, who looks freakishly young for her age. I think she might be in her 80s. It was wonderful. She was full of life. I think I saw on Twitter that she wore the same dress she wore way, way, way back when. Nice. I want to see the superstars. I want to see the Sidney Poitiers, the Denzel Washingtons, the people that you've loved for years, and then we're getting like Gina Rodriguez. No offense on Gina Rodriguez, but she's not a big movie star. This is a night for the biggest movie stars, and that's why I was applauding when Christopher Walken came on stage. I mean, that's the magic of movies. Not the actors who get a couple of gigs and go away. This is a very tough business, and if you can survive for decades and keep getting people to watch you, that's amazing. I mean, like a Jodie Foster is a good example. That's what I love about these nights, and I just didn't see much of it tonight.
Yeah, Jodie Foster comes out with Jennifer Lawrence, who looks like she's 2 feet taller than Jodie Foster, which I didn't think that Jodie Foster was particularly tall, but I'm like, wait, is Jennifer Lawrence a giant? Am I missing something? But to your point about Gina Rodriguez, she presented with Tom Holland, so I will share now.
And same with him. Yeah, he's not a big star yet. He may well be someday.
But see, he is Spider-Man, so I will share, of course, the joke that I had at home because I was very proud of myself. Gina Rodriguez, who plays Jane the Virgin, Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man, also known as Peter the Virgin. But anyway, this is a little something for my comic book friends. And speaking of comic books, Best Adapted.
He barely knew her.
Nice. Best Adapted Screenplay did not go to Logan. I thought that would have been a nice touch. I think that was a great movie. Not something that I really expected. I also would have been very happy to see The Disaster Artist win in that category. But
the winner's escaping me real quick. Who won the adapted screenplay?
That's a great question.
Call Me by Your Name.
Call Me by Your Name. And that's another one of those ones where, so the gay experience story. So it's like sometimes there are things that, that's another one. That was the other example I wanted for the narrative of movies that could have won because it would have fit a specific role. So that's what won instead of Logan or The Disaster Artist.
Who was it? Well, I thought it was on here recently that somebody made that hilariously salient point of that movie is about exactly what Kevin Spacey is being persecuted for, like a 25-year-old man going after a teenage boy.
Yeah, the Call Me by Your Name. Yeah. I mean, I think. Well, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I haven't seen Call Me by Your Name.
I haven't either.
A friend may or may not have loaned me a screener. It may or may not be in a stack somewhere in my house. I have definitely not watched it.
With your other gay porns?
No. Those have been watched on repeatedly. Yeah. Look, I just watched them for the story, okay, Jeff? I don't know. I mean, Christian, there's no reason to expect something like Logan to win for even Best Adapted, right? I mean, that was just the nerd in me wanting, something for nerds to get excited about.
Yeah, no, I agree. But at the same time, I applaud the voters for giving it a chance. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I think maybe a year or two ago, Mad Max Fury Road was up for Best Picture. That's an action sci-fi dystopian romp. That's not Oscar stuff. So I do appreciate the fact that I think the voters are getting a little more loose, or at least a little more willing to kind of applaud things that are not, historical biopic. This is, there's certain formulas that are so locked in Oscar voting that anytime it gets shaken up a little bit, I think it's cause for celebration. So I think Logan just getting nominated alone was good.
Yeah, I think it's a very specific kind of superhero story. You're not. I don't know that your X-Men Avengers movies are going to be nominated. I mean, but who knows?
Sandman will win that.
With the Neil Gaiman Sandman.
Yeah, when it eventually comes out.
I was gonna say, I think we're still waiting for that. But yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that could. But I think like an actual movie with known superheroes. I mean, again, Heath Ledger for Dark Knight is a very specific exception. But I think seeing that. But by the way, the based on characters created by Len Wein and John Romita Sr., the actual comic book nerds who are fans of the Bladtcast would probably be like, "How did that? No, that drove me crazy because the character is not even remotely created by them. He just happened to, Len Wein wrote for The Incredible Hulk when Logan showed up. The character in that movie is not based on anything that is from, the early 70s. But anyway, that's the sort of stuff that bothers me. I did think that some of the presenters had some good moments. I thought Sandra Bullock having them lower the lights so that she could look younger and like, okay, let's get down to 38. I mean, things like that might go on too long, but I'm like, all right, I kind of like that sort of stuff. And, we mentioned Jodie Foster before. Her coming out on crutches and saying that Meryl Streep, I Tanya'd her. I'm like, yeah, see, that I like. I like the stuff when, the actual celebrities and movie stars can joke around about each other, and that's the sort of stuff that makes it a fun night. But those moments are always few and far between.
Call me cheap, but I was mad at her for leaving the obvious pun on the table that she got a Streep down.
Streep down. Cinematography went to Blade Runner 2049, and I only bring this up because, as Jeff knows, I just was like, man, the first one's so good, and I just stare at the original Blade Runner with the sound off, and you just look at it, or you turn the picture off and just listen to it, and it's like a masterpiece. This is like it's okay. Our friend Will, who's not here, I would say it's fine. But this is one of those movies I was not blown away by, and maybe it's because I was so excited going into it. Christian, I know, look, cinematography is not a major award, but what do you think about that movie, just to kind of get your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if you're going to give it any award, it's for cinematography because it looks absolutely gorgeous. So I get that. And yeah, I was a little left. It's a kind of film where people didn't appreciate Blade Runner initially for the most part. So I'm kind of hesitating to say it was meh because I feel like I want to watch it again in a few years and see how it kind of flows over me. But yeah, it didn't grab me like I wanted it to. And I think it won for best special effects over War for the Planet of the Apes. And I thought that the achievement of making those apes so darn realistic should have won the day. I mean, I watched it recently again. It's stunning what they did. So I'm kind of skipping categories here, but yeah, I think no one can deny how good Blade Runner 2049 looks, but it just didn't have it to me as a story.
Right, and Jeff, I'll let you weigh in on that movie for a second. But you mentioned Planet of the Apes, and just from a technical standpoint, being able to make a movie that is filled with CGI characters who are apes, and only one of them actually really speaks English, and you've got like 20-minute sequences where you have one ape who talks and the rest are doing sign language and they're out in the snow.
The deaf own Hollywood. I fucking told you.
See, this just illustrates your point. Jeff, tell me why I'm wrong about Blade Runner 2049. And I don't know. I was just so underwhelmed and maybe disappointed because I wanted to like it so much.
I don't want to say that you're wrong. I enjoyed the film, but I'm not like its defender in any regard. I think I saw Blade Runner for the first time like much more recently than you, obviously, but like probably only within the last 10 years or something. Okay. So to me, like I don't know, having seen that movie then and then seeing this movie now, the pacing didn't bother me as much as it seemed to have bothered a lot of other people, which is also interesting because that's I hated Sicario, which is another Denis Villeneuve film.
Right.
And everybody like loves that movie, and everybody who loves that movie hated this movie, and I like loved or enjoyed this movie. It just seems like there's this weird crossover, almost like this uncanny valley for Denis Villeneuve movies, where it like just either pisses you off or it works. It's like either too slow or it's just right.
So let's talk about, a movie that has a couple of wins, Frances McDormand and Sam Rockwell, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which I found to be a good movie. And I guess the fact that it doesn't have sort of the tidy ending that I thought it would. If you haven't seen the movie, I guess we can be sort of vague. There's a character that we meet who we think is somebody who they've been looking for the whole time. And when it turns out that it isn't really, I'm like, oh, well, they're going to go get him anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I guess. But I think because, and look, it's probably better storytelling to not go with the obvious choice. But it didn't, I don't know, I guess it wasn't satisfying for me in that way. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I think there were great performances in that movie. There's that kid in that movie who is also from the Casey Affleck movie, Manchester by the Sea.
Yep.
And he's in like 3 other things. And every time I see that kid, I'm like, who the hell is that kid? And I look him up. Oh, right. It's that kid from Manchester by the Sea who everything I see him in, he's good. Mm-hmm. It's just now it's only finally just starting to stick with me. What did you think of 3 Billboards, Jeff?
I would say that was probably my favorite film of the ones nominated. I love Martin McDonagh films. There's the 3 that I know of. If there's others, I'm not aware of them. But In Bruges, 7 Psychopaths, and this one, I think they're phenomenal. I love the dialogue. I love the way that people interact with one another. I love that it's like that unconventional storytelling style, like that it kind of like messes with the beats that you would expect it to, and that so I guess spoiler alert, skip ahead like 10 or 30 seconds if you haven't seen the film. In the middle of the movie, Woody Harrelson killing himself is just like out of left field almost, and it just throws you for your loop. Feels like it should be the end of the film, but it's not. It's almost like the inciting point of action, because to me the film so much became about the development of Sam Rockwell, like as a character and a human being, right? We start off the film, he's just an asshole with no real reason.
Although he does read comics, so I'm going to give him that. I'm only giving him that, but I will give him that.
And that's why he can become a better person.
That's right. But there's also, look, there's arson gone wrong in the middle of the film, which changes everything, tying into what you're saying. And I think there is a lot going on in it, and I guess I just wish that when it ended, I felt like, yeah. Instead, I was like, oh, okay, sure. Christian, what did you think of 3 Billboards?
I have to rewind briefly to say I'm pretty sure the classic line, they're filming midgets. Was that from In Bruges? Did I get that right?
Yep.
I'll never forget. Anyway, I love the acting and like the movie. And, a lot of people said, oh, this is a dark comedy, a black comedy, a riotous comedy. I didn't laugh, nor did I get the comedy angle of it. And I also thought that the Frances McDormand's character wasn't just aggrieved and going too far. She was kind of like a monster. And while everyone's saying that the Sam Rockwell character was the monster, I think they were both monsters. Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes it uncomfortable for me to watch. But also just absolutely phenomenal acting. And I think Woody Harrelson would have had a better chance for Best Supporting and stealing it from Rockwell if he had 1 or 2 more scenes. But gosh, I love Harrelson so much on screen. He's just so versatile, so interesting, so charismatic, so unexpected always. And he's always the best thing about what he does. He amazes me. And I think if you kind of go back to Cheers and go, okay, who's the breakout star who's going to be making movies for decades? You don't say Woody. You say almost anyone else in that cast.
It's a great point because, when you see him on that, you think that, maybe he's going to do White Men Can't Jump. And that would be it. But, which, by the way, he's great in that movie. I'm picking a movie because I was thinking of one of his first movies. But, I mean, how great he was on True Detective, the good season. And, and you see him, I mean, I guess he's getting, in his older age, he's starting to play a very specific type. But at the same time, he gives very different performances in movies, and he's one of those guys who's sort of sneakily gone and become, you know, one of our better actors. I'm not going to say he's, you know, I don't want to give somebody too many kudos and have people freak out, but I think he's a great actor, and he really was able to show it in this movie. And yeah, very surprising sort of the turn his character takes for the people who fast forwarded and didn't hear what you said before.
Yeah, I'd say for the people who fast forwarded that, considering how little he's in that movie, how emotional that scene was, I think it speaks volumes. Yeah,
and it's so different and so well handled for, you know, stuff like, look, we see stuff like that happen all the time. And in movies, I mean, not in our lives, jeez. But and I think that it was a very unique way to kind of handle it. Another movie that didn't get a lot of awards, but as we said, Allison Janney won for I, Tonya. I think if that movie was going to win anything, that was it right there.
Oh, yeah.
Watching that movie, you're like, oh yeah, yeah. And it's funny because Allison Janney like always wins the Emmy. You know, and now she's like, hang on, I got this. And she beat Laurie Metcalf, another TV actress. So there you go. So it's, you know, everything comes together. But I thought she was fantastic in there. And it's funny because my wife and I watched I, Tonya together, I don't know, a month ago or so. And it was only seeing the clips tonight and seeing Margot Robbie there, as she pointed out, like, you know, it was like the way that they made her up and the way she acted. They might as well have gotten Jamie Presley, who was the wife on My Name is Earl. I'm like, oh my God, she would have been a perfect Tonya Harding. You know, I mean, she's not Harley Quinn, but I'm like, oh yeah, that's the exact actress that you want to play that character. I thought that was a good movie. It's a very unlikable person in real life, so it's different when it's an unlikable character in a movie. And you can just be like, oh, that fictional, you know, Archie Bunker and Eric Cartman are great characters, so you can really like them, but they're not real people. At least I don't think Eric Cartman's a real person. I might be wrong, but you know, but this is Tonya Harding, and whatever her involvement is, you know, you're just like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're a piece of shit. So it's hard to really get wrapped up. What did you think of I, Tonya, Christian?
I really liked it, and I think that the movie does play fast and loose with her life, where you feel much more sympathetic toward her, and it doesn't really kind of detail how enmeshed she was in that plot. But having said that, I thought the structure was fascinating. It was a little documentary-ish. They break the fourth wall a couple of times, but I just thought it was rigorously entertaining. I was involved from the get-go, and I think at the same, sometimes with Oscar bait movies, I just want to have fun with it. And I thought it had that. It was dark. It was funny. It was tragic. It had almost everything. And then by the time that sort of that man of mystery / bodyguard appears, I was hooked. I thought it was very compelling. So I enjoyed it highly. And Allison Janney, I have no problem with her winning. And I think that her performance was so good because as monstrous and as over the top as she was as the mother, I still felt a little humanity kind of flickering within her. And I think that's the magic of the performance.
Jeff, what did you think of Tonya?
I thought it was good. I didn't think it was anything fantastic. I think it's just kind of, if you've seen the documentaries about her, which I have, because I was like right at the right age where that's like one of my early memories is like, oh yeah, Tonya Harding, the one who like breaks kneecaps. There's an old like 90s film that I grew up watching called like Attack of the 5'2" Women that's like half about Tonya Harding and half about Lorena Bobbitt.
Oh yeah, the good old days.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I gotta say, second best Tonya Harding film I've seen. Gotta put it out there.
Women dealing with their aggression. Another movie that I sat there and knew it was well made, but it was exactly what I expected it to be. So I think that, again, I didn't really feel anything. Dunkirk is a great accomplishment, and there's some very good performances. Visually, it won all these technical awards. All of that. It's great. But you know how interested I am in Dunkirk? I like the way it was handled better in Darkest Hour, where it's like a thing that happens and they just talk about it. Yeah. And there was something about that movie, and I feel like most people who've seen it are just blown away, and it's amazing. And I don't know what it was about it, but there was just something where I'm like, I know this is good, but this was supposed to be good. Mm-hmm. How about give me like amazing, which Kenneth Branagh's great. Everything is good about it, but nothing about it was great to me. It was all good, nothing great though. Jeff,
My analysis of that film that I stick to is that I felt like it was incredibly interestingly told, but that's about all it had going for it. It wasn't an interesting story. It was just interestingly told story. Like people taking a small boat ride from France to England is really not the most exciting, because at the end of the day, that's what it was, is you got civilian boats coming over, getting them over. It took a course of a day for the actual evacuation, right?
Sure.
So I don't know. But the breaking it into 3 parts, having the different perspectives on time, that's what made it a fascinating story to me.
Christian, what did you think of Dunkirk?
It's such an achievement in sound and visuals, and such an achievement in making an emotionally distant story. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't connect with anyone on screen. I missed half the dialogue. I don't know if that's maybe I'm getting old, but it was either just overrun by the guns, or the dial, or sort of the accents. I was amazed by it. I mean, I understand why it blew people away. It's a very strong, visceral experience, but I didn't care. It's a war movie. I should be right on the front lines with them. I should be bleeding for them. I should be hoping against hope that they survive, and I had none of those emotions. So I think technically it's a marvelous film, but it's something I never want to watch again.
Yeah, I felt like maybe what was missing was heart. I mean, there's the boy who dies in it. I should have felt something, but I was like, oh, that sucks for him. So, I should probably get a refill on this popcorn soon. And Jeff has been to the movies with me enough that he knows, like, hey, that's really important.
Yeah.
That's how and it's interesting because to me, this movie is part of, just to bring it all back to comic books, like we talk about so much here on the Bladtcast, it's like all part of like a big crossover event between The King's Speech, Dunkirk, and Darkest Hour. They all reference kind of the same things, hey, that's the king from The King's Speech, and he's talking about
Infinity
Dunkirk.
evacuation.
Yeah, exactly. All we need is Thanos in the Dunkirk gauntlet at the end. And if I have to pick one of those movies, I'm like, oh, King's Speech is the best one, and the best performance is definitely like Gary Oldman's great as Winston Churchill in The Darkest Hour. I think that the woman who plays his assistant is sort of somebody that you can identify with, and that's the whole point of the character. But it's not like, to me, that movie was amazing. That was like a great performance that you're like, well, he's got to win for this, because that's not what Gary Oldman looks like. Gary Oldman looks like Commissioner Gordon. I know Gary Oldman.
Let me give you my super quick breakdown of the entire plot of The Darkest Hour. Gives a speech. Nobody waves their hankies. Gives a speech. Everyone waves their hankies.
You should have said spoiler alert before that.
Sorry. Spoiler alert. Hanky alert.
What was your ultimate thought on Darkest Hour, Christian?
I thought it was a movie that I wanted to love more than any movie this year, and I thought it was good. And obviously the performance is spectacular, and the makeup is transformative in a way that we just don't see. Because Hollywood, for all its magic, they can't make people look old. They're terrible at it. But I think they did a beautiful job there. To me, and this is actually echoing what was just said, it was Winston gives a speech, then he gives another speech, then he gives a third speech. Then by the 18th speech, but this one's really important speaking, I was burned out by it. I feel like it needed more of a cadence, a rhythm to it than it had. Maybe break out of the sort of the environment that he was in, and he does that a little bit with that train ride or subway, whatever that was. But I did really like I should.
I did really like that scene, and I hope that that's true. I hope that really happened. I liked Winston Churchill on the tube talking to everyday people and getting ideas. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool.
Did you know that working title for this film was King's Speech 2, not The King's Speech?
Well, the interesting thing is the first speech that he gives, I'm like, oh, this is we'll fight them on the beaches. I'm like, oh, all right, we're gonna get that speech, and then the movie's gonna be about and like, no, it's just about building to that speech. And I was like, they already had that speech at the end of Dunkirk. So I've seen that speech this year. I don't know, but.
But you didn't get the prerequisite speeches.
That's
to
true.
know how.
So the movies that won, there aren't a lot that I think that are amongst like my favorite movies. One that I'm just going to completely admit, even from the clips, I can still barely figure out what it's about. Christian, what is Phantom Thread?
Okay, I did not see Phantom Thread. It kind of came out so late in the cycle. I didn't get a screening or a screener. And then by the time it came out, I was so disinterested in everything about it. I know it's, Daniel Day-Lewis and he's great and Paul Thomas Anderson's right, blah, 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 blah. It didn't look remotely interesting. It looked like there are certain, I guess, auteur pieces that engage you or thrill you or intrigue you or, oh, I'm going to see that because that person did it. I just had no reaction to this film whatsoever, and I just missed it. And I hear people saying it's boring, it's this, it's that. I'm getting a sense that director has a cult of personality, and whatever he puts together, people love, and I'm not in that cult.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about Paul Thomas Anderson, and that in his movies are like, there's like hidden a movie that I like Magnolia. I thought was great. Right up until the frogs started raining. And Somewhere in There Will Be Blood was a great movie, but what I sat through was a still pretty good movie, but it wasn't a great movie. And I was like, I don't think movies need to be short, but sometimes I'm like, let me get into that movie and kind of take out all this other stuff that I don't think we really needed. And I guess I tread very lightly when it comes to Paul Thomas Anderson, but I feel like I might see that one at some point, but because I don't have a screener, might not. Call Me by Your Name. The fact that our friend Will, who's usually here on the podcast, that when he didn't love that movie, I was like, all right, that seems like a movie that should be right up his alley, And I'm like, when he doesn't like it, he undersold it. I'm like, all right, I'm probably not gonna get to that.
Well, I think movies like that, and this is me just completely making an assumption. So I'll watch the movie eventually and find out if I'm right.
Because I may or may not have it, and I may or may not loan it to you. Who knows? Yeah.
Is that it's obviously about a relationship dynamic, and if the relationship dynamic is about like a young man and an older man, that might not be the most relatable for like a bunch of us. So it depends to me how esoteric those problems are. Like, I don't know. I could see that film turning a lot of people off just from the sense of like, I see that this is beautifully made. I don't dislike the film. There's nothing about it that I can connect with in my personal experience. And I think at the root of all enjoyment of film is finding something, some nugget of what you just saw that you can connect with.
Was that one that you saw, Christian, Call Me by Your Name?
Yeah, I thought it was perfectly fine. I wasn't enamored with it, but I do think that when it comes to films that, I'm Straight, it's a gay love story. There's always got to be those moments in a film that you could all relate to. It's like Lady Bird. Lady Bird's a teenage girl's coming of age story, but I could relate to her like falling in love for the first time, getting her heart broken, being unsure about her relationships, tension with her parents. Those are universal truths. So I think the good movies touch on those, whether it's a gay relationship or a straight relationship or a girl or a guy coming of age. I mean, I think to be a successful movie, it's got to kind of cross those barriers. And if it's very specific, then I think you do lose a lot of people.
By the way, Lady Bird, you reminded me because you talked about gay relationship. Lady Bird, another one of those movies that kid from Manchester by the Sea was in. He's in that movie too.
Being a gay.
Eventually.
Sorry. Queer.
Well, yeah, because of the part of the country you're from, you're still allowed to use that word. Only you, only the Boston accent. Anyway, Christian, I've enjoyed talking about these Oscar movies with you. I did want to talk about a more important movie that you've written about recently. Actually, you didn't write about it, but it's featured on HollywoodandToto.com. Death Wish. Now, this is a movie that I feel like, so the piece on Hollywood and Toto, I guess, Karl Kozlowski, and let me know if I said his name incorrectly, he basically wrote a piece about there's two movies that I would see under the same circumstances. Oh, suddenly I have some extra time. It's 108 degrees in the valley. I want to sit in some air conditioning. I would see either Death Wish or Red Sparrow. And I understand that there's some nudity. I might be interested in Red Sparrow. So right now, that might win. But have you seen either or both of these movies?
Yeah, I saw both of them. Actually, I reviewed them both for the site, and that was an extra story I wrote. I don't like to do two movie reviews. I don't want to repeat myself, but the fact that Carl is a very good writer, and also he's very anti-gun. So I thought his perspectives on Death Wish were
Oh, that's
interesting.
interesting. Sure.
But yeah, and as far as the nudity in Red Sparrow, it is not the titillating kind of any sort. It's more
no titties.
punishing and look what I just did.
I know, I'm glad yeah, he beat me to it, but yeah. So you're saying it's actually not presented in a sexy manner?
Absolutely not.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
Jennifer Lawrence is gorgeous. I think she's actually becoming more beautiful as she gets a little older, and she's a great actress. I admire her in all her work, but this is not like, oh, I can't wait to see Jennifer Lawrence naked. It's not that kind of movie.
All right. Well,
Sorry.
Yeah. But Death Wish just sort of has this stigma attached to it. And, we talked on the Bladtcast a lot about the Netflix Punisher series, and we're like, look, we get it. There are certainly far too many. By there even being one mass shooting ever, that's too many. And I'm like, you can still tell stories like this. I'm okay with stories like this being told. Death Wish and The Punisher, any of the, Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis movies from our youth. I think that all those movies are still something that there's room for. But I understand the idea that you point at a movie like this, like, oh, I don't know, should he really have guns, or should they do what they did to E.T. and make him have walkie-talkies instead of guns?
Can I ask you both a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Most media writers, most film critics are absolutely aghast at the new Death Wish, and it's vigilantism. It's NRA approved, but then you have The Punisher on Netflix, and obviously other iterations of it as well. Aren't they very similar? I mean, person gets his family wiped out to a certain degree. Person gets his guns going, gets revenge, takes out the trash. Why was there such outrage over the Death Wish? And I don't see nearly that, or maybe none at all, towards Punisher.
There was very minimal outrage against the Punisher, but it was mostly from the sort of sites that cover comic book stuff. So they felt like, well, they need to take the point. And by the way, the comic book version of the Punisher is literally Death Wish. His family's like out in the park and it's a mob hit gone wrong. The Netflix version's a lot more modern and high tech, sort of what happens. But yeah, and I agree, by the way, and I think it's the simple fact that it's a movie, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to point to this movie. And maybe because it's a Netflix show, and God, Netflix has so many shows and so many movies, maybe people did miss it. Do you have any thoughts, Jeff, as to what the difference was?
I would say that, I guess here's probably the easiest Occam's razor solution. A movie has an infinitely larger marketing budget than a Netflix series. So more people knew about it and knew to complain about it.
It's. I think that might ultimately be what it comes down to. And look, I of course am a sucker for Bruce Willis, and that goes a long way. I own all 5 Die Hard movies, and I know what I'm saying, because 2 of them are really good.
The one with Jai Courtney, even?
Yes, even the one with Jai Courtney, and. By my estimation, only the first one and third one are good movies, by the way. The first one is great...
That one's called Jai Hard, by the way.
Yes, it is indeed called Jai Hard. The first Die Hard, I would say, is a great movie. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the third Die Hard is a really good movie. And then the rest, I don't know. I just feel like I need to own them. But I love Bruce Willis so much that I feel like I will see this movie. And, now that I have a better understanding of the nudity in Red Sparrow, maybe I'll see if it ends up on Mr. Skin at some point or something. I don't know. But anyway, and Christian, you're always writing about films and I guess media in general over at Hollywood and Toto, right? It's not only movie reviews, and I know you have your podcast on there as well.
Yeah, no, I cover TV, a little bit of music as well. And I do critique my fellow critics sometimes, and also the sort of the Hollywood entertainment media, because I think they really fall down on the job a lot. I think they overcover some things and completely ignore other things, which are pretty important. So I just feel like I'm I want to kind of alert people to what's going on in journalism. I think it's important. So I do that a lot at the site.
And it is HollywoodInToto.com. And as I said, you are at Hollywood in Toto. What's coming up sort of movie-wise that you're looking forward to? Something that you haven't seen yet, but you are looking forward to?
This one's a little bit off the radar. It's a horror film. I've just heard about it recently called A Quiet Place. and I believe it's Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, and I think he directed it.
Oh wow.
And the trailer is just fascinating. It's a family living in this sort of out of the way home, and they have to live their lives extremely quietly because if they make noise, something comes out and gets them. And that doesn't sound like a really interesting premise, but when you see the trailer, I just was grabbed by it. So I'm curious about that. Obviously, Avengers: Infinity War, I'm there in a heartbeat. And otherwise, it's just the usual reboots and sequels and stuff, and I'll check it out and hope that they're good. But those two movies kind of jump to mind for me.
For A Quiet Place, like, it looks like it's exactly what I thought They Come at Night was.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like, when I first saw the trailer for that movie, that's what I thought there was going to be, something that came at night.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
And by the way, Infinity War, the big news being that they moved it up to like the end of April. And I'm like, great,
That's
because
right.
I've already been waiting for too long for this movie.
Hell yeah.
So just if they want to keep moving it up, that'll be great. And, I'm really looking forward to Infinity War. And as I've talked about in one of the shows that I do here at AfterBuzz TV, I am fairly convinced that at least most of our beloved Phase 1 Avengers are going to die in this movie, mostly because there will be no contract renewals for these actors. And, look, Chadwick Boseman's going to be in 5 more movies. Everybody else is locked up. They're like, we're going to be fine. So, although I do think Robert Downey Jr. will be making these movies after he dies. I think that they'll do sort of the Grand Moff Tarkin Rogue One treatment with him.
I know that you're going to get a solo cup either way, but how excited for the movie are you?
Look, I'm excited. I'm very excited, and but I'm probably, I don't know. There's just so many things coming out. This is a good time. This is going to be a good time for nerds, really. I mean,
My problem with the Solo movie is that they made the Solo trailer and you don't get to see Han Solo. I thought that was a little weird.
Yeah.
Have you seen the better version of it where somebody like recut it?
That was sabotaged by the
with
Beastie
Sabotage.
Boys. Have you seen that, Christian?
No, I have
Yeah,
not. No.
which
so much
our
better.
friend Will mentioned that people were angry that song "Sabotage" by the Beastie Boys was included in the trailer for Star Trek Beyond, and I'm like, I wasn't complaining about that. That's actually in 2 of the 3 J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, and I'm like, well, how did they not put it in the second one?
Why would I complain about an awesome song
Yeah.
that's just like awesome in general?
Yeah. Well, awesome in general is of course our special guest, Christian Toto, and I'm glad we do this on Oscars night. We'll have to find an excuse to do it on another night. Having to wait every year, it seems too long. But again, HollywoodandToto.com at Hollywood and Toto. Christian, we really appreciate it, and we always appreciate you making time for the Bladtcast, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right. And for me, Christian Blatt, you can find me at ChristianDMZ. And of course, the Bladtcast is at BLADTCAST on Twitter. And the Bladtcast on Facebook, Bladtcast.com. That's on the internet. And Jeff, where do people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jeff DeRay, where I range between like borderline suicidal, depressing tweets and silly, inane tweets.
I like the silly inane tweets. And I've heard a rumor that I think will be unveiled at some point, that there's a magic number that if you hit that number of followers, you'll tweet every day.
Every single day.
So stay tuned to the Bladtcast.
And you
for
can
that.
even tell me to make them happy.
That's true. In any case, thank you so much to Christian Toto, and thanks to everybody. Thanks to Shareable Texas for joining us in the chat, and Trox from Alaska, who's excited to see Death Wish, and we appreciate the everybody in Bladtcast Nation who was here tonight or listening after the fact, and we will see you next time on the Bladtcast. And this is when I hope we go dark and we're not being shown.